The courtroom was silent, except for the faint rustle of papers and the occasional squeak of polished shoes on the floor. I sat at the table, heart pounding, trying to steady my breathing as I watched my daughter, Emily, move toward the front with a small tablet in her hands. The divorce had been long, bitter, and exhausting, each session chipping away pieces of my composure. But nothing prepared me for this. The judge, an older man with sharp eyes that missed nothing, looked at her curiously, while my ex-husband sat rigid, jaw tight, hands folded over the edge of the table, eyes flicking between me and Emily with an expression I couldn't decipher. "This is a video I made," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. "I think everyone should see it." She pressed play, and the screen flickered to life, showing images I didn't recognize at first: a park, a quiet street, a bench where I had never been, yet somehow I felt a strange familiarity. Then the video shifted, and I froze. There was my ex-husband, smiling, laughing with someone else. Someone who looked a lot like Emily, yet wasn't her. The courtroom erupted with whispers. I could feel the weight of every gaze on me, the air thick with tension and anticipation. My ex-husband's face turned pale. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, fumbling for words. The judge's brow furrowed, and even the bailiffs exchanged uncertain glances. Emily pressed pause. "This is why I wanted you all to see it. Because I found something I think you've been hiding from me my whole life." Her hands were shaking, but her eyes held a determination I hadn't seen in years. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I had no idea what she had discovered, and the fear of it was like a cold hand gripping my chest. The video played again, this time showing documents, receipts, and a series of messages, each more incriminating than the last. I realized with horror that Emily had uncovered a side of her father I had suspected but had never confirmed. The betrayal, the secrets, the lies, it was all laid bare, undeniable, in front of the entire courtroom. My ex-husband's composure cracked, his usual veneer of control slipping as the reality of exposure swept over him. I wanted to look away, to shield myself from the unfolding disaster, but I couldn't. The truth demanded to be seen. And Emily, in her quiet courage, had made sure no one could ignore it. The whispers grew louder, curiosity and shock mixing with a sense of disbelief. The judge cleared his throat, restoring a fragile semblance of order, but even he seemed unsettled by what had just been revealed. Emily's voice broke through again. "I wanted to know who I really am, who he really is, and I think you all deserve to know too." She took a deep breath, pressing play one final time. The video showed a series of confessions, moments where my ex-husband admitted to financial manipulation, secret meetings, and plans that would have affected Emily's life in ways I could barely comprehend. I felt a surge of protectiveness and fury rise within me. How dare he? How dare he let my daughter live in ignorance while plotting, scheming, and hiding the truth from her? And yet there was also a profound sadness. Emily had to uncover this on her own, forced into a position I should have protected her from. The courtroom's silence was broken by gasps, murmurs, and finally the sharp voice of the judge. "Mr. Reynolds, care to explain these revelations?" His tone was calm, but the weight of authority was undeniable. My ex-husband swallowed hard. His eyes darted to me, then to Emily, then back to the screen that displayed his failures in glaring clarity. I can explain," he began, but the words sounded hollow, unconvincing even to him. Each sentence fell flat, weighed down by the incontrovertible evidence Emily had so meticulously gathered. The betrayal was not just personal, it was procedural, calculated, and it had finally been exposed. Emily turned to me, her small hand trembling as she reached for mine. I squeezed it, silently conveying a mixture of pride, sorrow, and love. She had taken control of her narrative, wielding truth like a weapon, yet also a shield. It was astonishing, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. The hearing continued, but I was barely listening. My mind replayed every scene in the video, every lie uncovered, every truth brought into the harsh light. And somewhere beneath the shock and anger, I felt a strange sense of liberation. The past, however painful, was finally confronted, and for the first time in years, there was a possibility of clarity, of justice, and of understanding. The tension in the room remained palpable, but Emily had shifted the power dynamic. No longer were we at the mercy of his secrets. Now the truth was undeniable, visible, and irrevocable. And in that moment, I realized that sometimes the courage of a child, the unwavering determination to seek the truth, could change everything, even in the midst of the darkest, most painful family betrayals. After the video ended, the courtroom seemed to shrink around me, the walls pressing in as if the air itself was charged with tension. My ex-husband slumped in his chair, face pale and defeated, trying to gather some shred of composure that had long since abandoned him. Emily stayed at the front, her eyes steady despite the shaking of her hands, a quiet courage radiating from her that left me both proud and terrified. The judge leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, his eyes never leaving the screen where the last frame of the video still glimmered faintly. "Do you deny any of this, Mr. Reynolds?" he asked, voice firm. My ex-husband opened his mouth, but no words came. It was as if the truth had immobilized him, locking him in place, leaving him exposed to the eyes of everyone present. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom again, a mix of disbelief, gossip, and the heavy weight of witnessing secrets finally revealed. I felt Emily's hand tighten around mine, and I realized she had orchestrated this, not maliciously, not out of spite, but out of a need to understand, to reclaim the story of her life from a father who had kept too much from her. Slowly, deliberately, the reality of what had been hidden settled over the room. I thought of every year we had struggled through lies, every whispered excuse, every family dinner where smiles masked tension, and I realized that the skeletons were not mine. They had been his, and now, at last, they were out in the open. Emily turned to face her father fully, her eyes sharp and unwavering. "I deserve to know who I really am. Not the version you've painted, not the image you've curated. The truth. I want the truth." There was a stillness in the air, a pause so thick it could have been sliced with a knife. My ex-husband's shoulders sagged, his eyes were glassy, unblinking, a man confronted by the consequences of decades of deceit. "Emily, he began, but the words faltered, twisted with guilt and shame, revealing nothing of the justification he might have hoped to construct. The judge finally cleared his throat. "This court recognizes the validity of the evidence presented. We will proceed with this understanding. Any attempts to obscure or deny the truth will be considered in the deliberations." Emily nodded once, sharply, her lips pressed together, her gaze unwavering. I felt an odd mixture of fear and relief. Fear for the confrontation that was inevitable, relief that the facade was crumbling and that my daughter would finally have clarity. As the hearing moved forward, more details emerged, and the depth of deception became horrifically clear. Financial documents, hidden accounts, unreported income, and arrangements that would have affected Emily's future came into view one by one. Each revelation was a hammer blow, echoing in my mind, shaking the foundations of a family I had once thought I understood. And yet, amidst the chaos, I saw Emily's strength. She faced each piece of truth with courage, refusing to be cowed by the enormity of it, refusing to let fear dictate her reaction. My ex-husband sat frozen, his control evaporated, the power he had wielded over years of hidden actions utterly dismantled in the glare of undeniable evidence. At one point, Emily's voice rose slightly, firm but not accusatory. "I trusted you, and you took that trust and broke it. But now I get to decide what to do with it, with all of it, and I choose to face it openly, with everyone knowing what happened." I felt tears prick my eyes, not only for the betrayal, but for the bravery of a child standing up to a parent, taking control of her own story in a way that no one had before. The court session stretched late into the afternoon, each moment dripping with tension, revelations layering on top of each other, creating a mosaic of truth and consequences that no one could ignore. By the time the hearing ended, the room was silent, exhausted, heavy with the knowledge that nothing would ever be the same. Emily turned to me, eyes shining, and whispered, "Thank you for believing in me." I swallowed hard, emotions flooding at once. Relief, pride, lingering fear, but most of all, a recognition that the courage to reveal truth, even when terrifying, could change everything. We left the courtroom slowly, the world outside feeling both unfamiliar and yet clear in ways it had never been. Emily held my hand tightly, a silent promise between us that no secret, no lie, could ever hold us back again. And though the journey ahead would be complicated, fraught with challenges and lingering resentments, I knew that for the first time we were stepping forward in honesty, empowered by the truth that had finally been revealed, and by the courage of a daughter who refused to be silenced. The drive home from the courthouse was quiet, the car filled only with the low hum of the engine and the occasional sighs from Emily, who stared out the window, her mind clearly elsewhere. I glanced at her, wondering how much of the burden she had already absorbed, how much fear and anger mingled with the pride that showed in her determined jaw and steady gaze. The city lights blurred past, casting fleeting shadows across her face, and for a moment I feared what she had seen in the video might leave scars no one could ever erase. When we pulled into the driveway, the house seemed smaller somehow, ordinary and yet loaded with all the memories and tensions that had accumulated over years of hidden truths. I opened the door and stepped inside, Emily following silently, and the familiar smell of the home hit me with a wave of nostalgia and melancholy. It felt like walking into a place I no longer fully knew, a place that had been shaped and reshaped by secrets and lies, by love and betrayal in equal measure. Emily set her tablet down on the kitchen counter, the device now heavy with the weight of evidence and revelations. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms, and for the first time that day, she spoke without the formality of a courtroom, without the protective layer she had worn all day. "Mom, I don't know what comes next. I don't know what to do with all of it, but I know I can't pretend anymore." I knelt beside her, taking her hands gently in mine. "You don't have to pretend. You never did. The truth is hard, I know, but it's also freeing. We can rebuild from this, even if it's not perfect, even if it's complicated." She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "It's just, he's my dad, and I don't know if I can ever look at him the same way again." I swallowed hard, recognizing the mix of grief and courage in her voice. "You don't have to forgive him right away. You don't even have to forgive him at all if you're not ready. But you can choose how his actions affect your life moving forward. You can take control." The next few days were a blur of phone calls, meetings with lawyers, and tense discussions with my ex-husband. Each conversation revealed more layers of deception, more missteps and omissions that Emily had uncovered, and each revelation further cemented the realization that our lives had been manipulated in ways we had barely understood. And yet, amidst the chaos, Emily and I found a rhythm, a way to navigate the storm together, to protect each other while confronting the consequences of the truth. One evening, as we sat together reviewing the documents she had gathered, Emily looked up with a mixture of frustration and determination. "Mom, I can't believe he thought he could get away with all of this. All those years, and we had no idea." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "It's painful, yes, but now we know. And knowing gives us power. The power to make choices, to reclaim our story, to refuse to be victims of deception." The weight of that realization settled over us, heavy but strangely liberating. We were no longer subject to the whims of someone who had hidden so much. We were agents in our own lives, fully aware of the past and capable of shaping our future. When Emily finally confronted her father, it was not with anger alone, but with the clarity and precision of someone who had seen every lie laid bare. "I trusted you," she said, voice steady, "and you broke that trust. But I see everything now, and I know exactly what I want moving forward." His face fell, the weight of exposure and accountability pressing down in a way he could not deflect. It was a confrontation unlike any we had experienced, raw and unfiltered, yet necessary, a reckoning that had been long overdue. And through it all, Emily remained composed, her courage unwavering, a beacon of strength and honesty. Over the following weeks, our lives slowly began to settle into a new reality. The divorce proceedings continued, but they were now informed by undeniable truth, with Emily's revelations guiding the process and ensuring that no further deception could influence the outcomes. I watched her grow stronger, more self-assured, her confidence tempered by the trials she had endured and the truths she had faced. And while there was still pain, still the lingering echoes of betrayal, there was also hope, a fragile, delicate hope that we could emerge from the shadow of lies into a life shaped by honesty, choice, and courage. Each night as we closed our eyes, I felt a quiet gratitude for her bravery, for the way that she had changed everything with a single act of truth-telling, and for the knowledge that no matter how dark the past had been, the future was now ours to define together. The days following the courtroom revelation were heavy, each one layered with tension, unspoken questions, and moments where the past threatened to suffocate the present. Emily and I navigated the house cautiously, each corner and room holding memories intertwined with secrets we were only now confronting. Every glance, every creak of the floorboard seemed amplified, as if the walls themselves remembered the lies whispered behind closed doors. My ex-husband retreated into a shell of shame and defensiveness, rarely speaking unless forced, his eyes avoiding ours. But Emily refused to let his silence dominate the narrative of her life. She spent hours reviewing the video and all the evidence she had collected, piecing together timelines, noting inconsistencies, and cataloging moments that proved the depth of deception. It was meticulous work, exhausting and painful, but it gave her control, a sense of agency she had been denied for so long. One evening, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, the tablet glowing softly in the dim light, her eyes focused and unflinching. "Mom," she said quietly, not looking up, "I've discovered more, things I didn't even know to look for before, and I think he expected me to never see them." I knelt beside her, my hand brushing against hers. "Then you're exactly where you need to be. You're seeing the truth, and that matters more than anything." Her lips pressed into a firm line, and she finally looked up at me, her expression a mix of determination and exhaustion. I never imagined all of this could be true, and yet, here it is. It's all real, and I have to decide what to do with it. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words, understanding that the choices she made now would shape not only her relationship with her father, but also the person she was becoming. The next confrontation came unexpectedly. My ex-husband had been summoned to discuss financial documents revealed in Emily's evidence, and he was forced into a room with both of us, the air tense with unspoken accusations. Emily stood tall, refusing to flinch, and when he opened his mouth to speak, she cut him off with a calm authority that left him visibly shaken. "I know everything now, every secret, every lie, and I want to know why. Why did you hide this from me? Why did you think I wouldn't find out?" He looked at her, mouth opening and closing, no sound emerging, eyes wide with a mixture of guilt and fear. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. For the first time in years, he could not manipulate, charm, or excuse his behavior. Emily's courage, her unrelenting pursuit of truth, had stripped away every layer of his control. Over the following days, our home became a place of reckoning. Conversations that were once avoided erupted into heated exchanges, confessions and apologies that came too late, but were necessary. Emily demanded answers, not just for herself, but for the record, for the courtroom, and for the family that had been fractured by secrecy. And in those moments, I saw a transformation in her, a resilience, a clarity, and a profound understanding of who she was and what she deserved. At night, when the house was quiet and the weight of the day had lifted temporarily, Emily and I would sit together, reviewing documents, strategizing, and sharing our thoughts. It was exhausting, emotionally and mentally, but it built a bond stronger than I had ever imagined. She was no longer just my daughter. She was a force, determined to claim her life, her truth, and her justice. Even my ex-husband began to show signs of recognition. the first cracks in his defenses appearing as he confronted the consequences of his long-hidden actions. He started to speak, hesitantly at first, then with more honesty, revealing small truths that had been buried for years. Each admission was a fragile thread, weaving a complex tapestry of regret, responsibility, and acknowledgement. And through it all, Emily maintained her composure, her sense of justice unwavering. She had learned to navigate betrayal without losing herself, to demand the truth without allowing rage to consume her. By the end of the week, the initial shock of revelation had settled into a cautious understanding. Emily had taken the reins of her own story, reshaping the narrative that had once been dictated by her father's secrets. The future remained uncertain, the path forward still strewn with challenges. But one thing was clear: the power of truth, the courage to face it, and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter would guide us through the darkest of shadows. And in that understanding, amidst the lingering tension and the traces of betrayal, we found a fragile but undeniable hope, a sense that even in the aftermath of lies and deception, life could be reclaimed, choices could be made, and trust, once shattered, could begin to be rebuilt. The following week brought a new wave of tension as Emily insisted on confronting not just her father, but the extended family who had, knowingly or unknowingly, played roles in keeping her in the dark. She demanded clarity, answers, and accountability, and no one could resist the force of her quiet determination. Invitations for casual conversations were declined, but Emily was insistent. She wanted every piece of the puzzle, every hidden conversation, every evasive excuse laid bare. I accompanied her to one such meeting, a quiet cafe where distant relatives gathered nervously, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation and unspoken fear. Emily began calmly but firmly, recounting the discoveries she had made, presenting evidence with clarity and precision, watching each person react as if they had been exposed in some intimate way. Gasps, shifting glances, and nervous laughter filled the room as one revelation after another emerged, revealing a network of deception that extended far beyond what I had imagined. I realized that the fractures in our family ran deep, built over decades, and Emily, at barely 16, had become the center of a reckoning no one had anticipated. My ex-husband sat silently across the table, hands clenched, a mask of shame and anger contorting his features, yet unable to stop the tide of truth. Emily's voice was steady, unwavering, and with every word she dismantled the illusions we had all been living under. "I trusted you," she said finally, eyes locking with her father's, "and you betrayed me. But I am not broken by your lies. I will not let this define me or the future I choose for myself." The relatives shifted uncomfortably, some ashamed, others defensive, yet the power of her words could not be denied. It was not just a confrontation. It was an unmasking, a cleansing of years of hidden truths, a declaration that deceit would no longer dictate the course of her life. As the days turned into nights, Emily's courage seemed to grow, her resilience evident in the way she navigated each new revelation and each uncomfortable confrontation. I watched her with a mixture of pride and awe, understanding that the strength she exhibited was forged not only from anger, but from an unwavering commitment to justice and truth. Slowly, I began to see small shifts even in my ex-husband. His pride and control were wounded, his defenses lowered, and for the first time in years, he appeared vulnerable, exposed, and human. He started speaking in fragments, apologizing in fits, admitting small failures, and for the first time, I sensed he recognized the magnitude of the damage caused by his deception. Emily listened, carefully considering his words, but she did not forgive lightly. She questioned, challenged, and demanded accountability, showing a maturity beyond her years, a blend of empathy and fortitude that left everyone in the room uneasy yet impressed. In the quiet moments after each confrontation, Emily and I would sit together, reviewing what had transpired, reflecting on the emotions, the truths uncovered, and the path forward. It was exhausting yet empowering, a testament to the resilience of a young girl forced into extraordinary circumstances, a young girl determined to reclaim her story. As the weeks went on, the courtroom sessions resumed, now under the shadow of Emily's revelations. The divorce proceedings, once filled with posturing and manipulation, became structured around the undeniable truths she had exposed. Evidence she presented ensured that nothing could be obscured, that no further lies could influence decisions about custody, property, or the future she and I were trying to secure. Each day in court was a battle of endurance and patience, but Emily faced it with courage, asking questions that cut through the pretense, forcing clarity and honesty from all involved. And through it all, I realized that the strength we had discovered together, her unwavering determination and my steadfast support, was transforming not just the legal outcome, but the very fabric of our relationship. For the first time in years, I saw her not as a child navigating the chaos of divorce, but as a young woman shaping her own destiny, demanding truth and insisting on accountability. And while the road ahead remained long, fraught with difficult decisions, emotional confrontations, and lingering resentment, there was a sense of hope, fragile, delicate, but undeniable. We were no longer trapped by secrets, by manipulation, by lies carefully concealed over years. The power of truth had shifted the balance, and Emily's courage had illuminated a path toward a future where honesty and integrity could finally prevail. As night fell over the city, we sat together quietly, the weight of the day heavy, but tempered by the knowledge that we had faced the darkness and emerged stronger. The road was not finished, the healing not complete, but a foundation had been laid, one built on transparency, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and daughter who refused to be silenced. And in that quiet, I understood that sometimes the revelation of truth, even when painful, could ignite strength, resilience, and a hope that nothing, not lies, not betrayal, not fear, could extinguish. The days grew heavier as Emily insisted on uncovering every remaining secret, determined that no hidden truth would escape her scrutiny. She spent hours poring over documents, old emails, and photographs, sometimes muttering under her breath as she pieced together timelines that had been manipulated and events that had been obscured. Each discovery revealed more of the depth of her father's deception, a tangled web of lies that affected not just her, but everyone connected to our fractured family. I watched her, torn between admiration and concern, knowing that the weight of the truth was heavy for someone so young, yet unable to stop her drive to confront it. One evening, as the winter wind howled outside, Emily found a series of letters she hadn't seen before, hidden among old legal documents. Her eyes widened as she read, and a tremor ran through her small frame. "Mom, this changes everything," she whispered, her voice shaking. I leaned over her shoulder, trying to catch a glimpse of the contents without intruding, and my heart sank as I realized the letters contained confessions, admissions of betrayal, and financial maneuvers that implicated not only her father, but others in the extended family. The next confrontation was inevitable. Emily decided it was time to bring these letters to court, to force the full exposure of everything that had been hidden. On the morning of the hearing, she was calm, almost eerily composed, as if she had rehearsed every word and anticipated every reaction. I felt a mixture of pride and apprehension as we walked into the courtroom, the air charged with anticipation. When she presented the letters, the courtroom fell silent. The weight of decades of deception lay bare for all to see. My ex-husband's face drained of color, his posture stiff, his usual confidence evaporated. I can't explain," he stammered. But even he seemed to sense the futility of words against the evidence that Emily had meticulously gathered. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he read through the letters, the gravity of the revelations evident in the tightening of his jaw. "This is substantial," he said slowly. Emily's gaze never wavered. She had become the center of the courtroom, the embodiment of truth demanding acknowledgement. "It's all here," she said, voice steady. "Everything that was hidden, everything that was denied. I deserve to know the full story, and so does everyone else." Over the next several hours, witnesses were called, explanations were demanded, and every attempt at obfuscation was met with Emily's unwavering insistence on clarity. Each revelation added layers to the already complex tapestry of lies, exposing relationships, financial manipulations, and secrets that had remained buried for decades. And through it all, Emily remained calm, collected, a beacon of integrity in a sea of deception. By the end of the day, the courtroom had shifted irreversibly. The balance of power, long held by her father and those complicit in hiding the truth, had tipped decisively in her favor. Emily had reclaimed her narrative, ensuring that no part of her life would remain controlled by lies. Outside the courtroom, as we walked to the car, the crisp winter air felt like a cleansing, a stark contrast to the tension that had dominated our days. Emily leaned against me briefly, whispering, "It's done. For now." I hugged her tightly, feeling both relief and lingering concern for the path ahead. We had faced darkness, uncovered truths that had been hidden for years, and emerged stronger, bonded by courage, trust, and the unshakable pursuit of honesty. The journey was far from over, but we had taken control of our story, and for the first time in years, the future seemed full of possibilities, free from the shadows of lies, guided by the clarity that only truth can provide. The final hearing felt almost surreal. The courtroom was quieter than ever, the weight of weeks of revelations, confrontations, and confessions hanging heavily in the air. My ex-husband sat at the defense table, his posture slumped, the proud mask of control he had worn for years completely gone. Emily stood at the front, poised and steady, her small frame radiating a confidence that belied her age. She had become the arbiter of truth in a room that had long been ruled by deception. When the judge called the session to order, the silence was palpable. "We are here to finalize the matters arising from the evidence presented," he said, his voice firm but measured. Emily stepped forward, placing the letters, videos, and documents neatly on the table, each piece a testament to her courage, perseverance, and meticulous effort. "Your Honor," she said, voice unwavering, "I want the court to understand the full truth, not just about my father, but about the impact his actions have had on my life and on everyone involved." My ex-husband tried to interject, but she calmly raised her hand, signaling him to wait. The judge read through the documents, occasionally glancing at Emily with an acknowledgement that this was extraordinary for someone so young. One by one, the consequences of years of lies were addressed, and slowly the pieces began to settle. Emily had not only uncovered the hidden truths, but had also guided the court to a resolution that ensured fairness, accountability, and most importantly, clarity. When the hearing concluded, a quiet sense of closure settled over the room. My ex-husband's shoulders sagged in resignation, the full weight of his actions finally recognized, while Emily stood tall, her determination and courage unshaken. As we stepped outside, the winter air felt crisp and liberating. Emily turned to me, a faint smile playing at her lips, eyes shining with pride and relief. "It's over," she whispered. I hugged her tightly, feeling the magnitude of everything we had endured, the lies, the betrayals, the endless pursuit of truth, and the strength we had found together. In that moment, I understood that courage, honesty, and love could overcome even the deepest deceptions. We had faced the shadows of our past and emerged stronger, wiser, and united. And though life would continue with its challenges, the bond between Emily and me had been forged in the crucible of truth, resilient and unbreakable. For the first time in years, I could breathe freely, knowing that the future, uncertain as it was, would be guided not by lies or fear, but by integrity, trust, and the unyielding courage of a daughter who refused to be silenced.